get the major pieces of their life put together faster than men, which is also partly why men aren't under so much pressure to grow up.
Jordan Peterson built his name by telling people how to face chaos. He told millions to stand up straight, take responsibility, tell the truth, and rebuild their lives. To his fans, he became a voice of reason. To his critics, he became a symbol of anger, culture wars, and nonstop conflict. But the painful part is this. While Peterson was teaching people how to survive suffering, his own life was slowly filling with it. Fame made him powerful, but it also made him exposed. Every opinion became a battle. Every weakness became public. And every private struggle became something the world could judge. Join us as we look inside Jordan Peterson's rise, family pain, controversies, and the private battle fame could not protect him from. The quiet beginning of a very loud life. Jordan Burnt Peterson was born on June 12, 1962, in Edmonton, Alberta. But his story did not begin in the kind of place where people expect a future world figure to come from. He grew up in Fairview, Canada, as the oldest of 3 children. His father, Walter, was a school teacher with Norwegian roots. His mother, Beverly, worked as a librarian at the Fairview campus of Grande Prairie Regional College. The home was mildly Christian, but not deeply strict. And even early on, Peterson was not the kind of boy who simply accepted what he was told. He questioned things. He pushed against things. In junior high, he became friends with Rachel Notley and her family. Years later, Notley would become leader of the Alberta New Democratic Party and the 17th Premier of Alberta. Peterson himself joined the New Democratic Party when he was only 13 and stayed until he was 18. Back then, he even hoped for a left-wing revolution, but that hope faded when he met left-wing activists in college. As a teenager, he also turned away from religion and decided that religion was for the ignorant, weak, and superstitious. That detail matters because later in life, he would spend years speaking about the Bible, belief, meaning, and God. The man who became famous for telling people to face chaos started as a young man already fighting with big ideas. Before the cameras, the protests, and the headlines, he was just a serious boy trying to understand why people believe what they believe. And soon, that question would push him far beyond the small world he came from. The ideas that pulled him into darkness. After graduating from Fairview High School in 1979, Peterson entered Grande Prairie Regional College. At first, he studied political science and English literature, and he planned to become a corporate lawyer. But one book changed the direction of his life. He read George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier, and later said it strongly affected his education and his view of the world. He then moved to the University of Alberta, where he completed a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science in 1982. After that, he took a year away from school and traveled through Europe. That trip was not just about seeing new places. It became another turning point. In Europe, he studied the psychological roots of the Cold War, the horrors of 20th century totalitarianism, and the work of writers and thinkers like Carl Jung, Friedrich Nietzsche, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Fyodor Dostoevsky. These were not light subjects. They were about suffering, evil, belief, power, and the way normal people can be pulled into terrible systems. Then Peterson returned to the University of Alberta and earned a second Bachelor of Arts degree, this time in psychology, in 1984. In 1985, he moved to Montreal to study at McGill University. There, under Robert O. Peel, he earned his PhD in clinical psychology in 1991. He stayed as a postdoctoral fellow at McGill's Douglas Hospital until June 1993, working with Peel and Maurice Dongier. His research focused on family alcoholism and problems linked to it, including childhood aggression, teenage aggression, and hyperactive behavior. Long before he became a public fighter, Peterson was already studying the pain that shapes people from the inside. The professor who made students cry. In July 1993, Peterson moved to Arlington, Massachusetts, and began teaching and doing research at Harvard University. He worked there until June 1998 as an assistant professor in the psychology department. This was years before most people online knew his name, but even then, his teaching left a strong mark. Author Greg Hurwitz, one of his former students, later called Peterson an inspiration. Shelley Carson, a former PhD student who became a Harvard professor, said Peterson's lectures had something close to a cult following. She even remembered students crying on the last day of class because they would not hear him teach anymore. That says a lot about the effect he had in a classroom. He was intense. He made big ideas feel urgent. He spoke about belief, behavior, personality, and meaning as if they were not just school topics, but matters of life and death. After Harvard, Peterson returned to Canada in 1998 and became a full professor at the University of Toronto. His interests covered many areas, including psychopharmacology, religion, personality, and political psychology. For most of his career, he also worked as a clinical psychologist and saw around 20 patients a week. In 1999, Routledge published his first book, Maps of Meaning: The Architecture of Belief. In it, he tried to explain how people build meaning, form beliefs, and create stories about the world. He also looked at why individuals and groups fall into social conflict, and how belief systems can lead to horrors like the Gulag, Auschwitz, and the Rwandan genocide. Outside the classroom, there were also unusual details around him. Starting around 2000, he collected Soviet-era paintings, almost like a reminder of the systems he feared. In 2016, he became an honorary member of the extended family of Kwakwakawaku artist Charles Joseph and was given the name Alestalagi, meaning Great Seeker. Peterson was not famous yet, but the ideas that later made him famous were already there: order, chaos, belief, danger, and the need for meaning. All he needed was a bigger stage, and soon the internet gave him one. The internet fight that changed everything. Peterson's rise did not begin with television. It began slowly, through lectures and the internet. In 2013, he started a YouTube channel called Jordan Peterson Videos and began uploading lectures and interviews. From 2014 onward, he posted recordings from his University of Toronto classes, including Personality and its Transformations and Maps of Meaning: The Architecture of Belief. At first, these were not flashy celebrity videos. They were long lectures, but people watched them because they felt different. Peterson spoke about pain, weakness, discipline, stories, religion, and the mind in a way that made some viewers feel like he was speaking directly to them. In March 2016, after 3 years of basic uploads, he said he wanted to clean up the old content and improve future videos. By then, his classroom work was already reaching far beyond the university. But the internet did not just give him an audience. It pushed him into the fight that changed his life. That same year, Peterson released a series of videos criticizing Bill C-16 and the language around gender identity and gender expression. He was angry about what he saw as political correctness on campus. He also objected to being asked to use alternative pronouns like singular they or words such as z and zir. To him, the issue was forced speech. To many critics, it was about respect for transgender people and basic protection from harm. That disagreement set off a firestorm. In October 2016, at a free speech rally, he was drowned out by a white noise machine. Pushing and shoving broke out in the crowd. Peterson also said the lock on his office door was glued shut. At the same time, the University of Toronto said it had received complaints about threats against trans people on campus. His employers warned that refusing requested pronouns could break Ontario human rights rules and faculty duties. But Peterson did not back down. He told the BBC, "I've studied authoritarianism for a very long time, for 40 years, and they're started by people's attempts to control the ideological and linguistic territory." Then he added, "There's no way I'm going to use words made up by people who are doing that. Not a chance." By then, Peterson was no longer just a professor. He had become a symbol, and symbols rarely get to live quietly. The bestseller that made him a star. From early 2017, money for Peterson's projects rose through Patreon. His support grew fast, going from about $1,000 a month in August 2016 to more than $80,000 a month by May 2018. He used that money to hire a production team, film lectures, and plan new projects. Then, in May 2017, he began The Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories, a live lecture series about Genesis. He treated Bible stories as patterns of human behavior, not just old religious tales. That made his rise even more interesting, because this was the same man who once dismissed religion as weakness. His views on faith were never simple. In 2017, when asked if he was Christian, he said the most straightforward answer was yes. But when asked if he believed in God, he said, "I think the proper response to that is no, but I'm afraid he might exist." That answer made him sound less like a preacher and more like a man wrestling with belief in public. Then, in January 2018, Penguin Random House published 12 Rules for Life, an antidote to chaos. This was not like Maps of Meaning, which was heavy and academic. This book was easier to read and built around self-help ideas. It told people to stand up straight, tell the truth, take responsibility, and set their own house in order before criticizing the world. The book appeared on bestseller lists and made Peterson famous across the UK, the United States, Canada, Australia, Germany, and France. Around the same time, his Channel 4 News interview with Cathy Newman went viral. Peterson came across to many viewers as calm and careful, especially when challenged on gender, the pay gap, and power. His line, "I choose my words very, very carefully," helped shape his image as a cool man of reason in the middle of a heated culture war. But the fame was not gentle. Supporters saw him as a truth-teller. Critics said he gave old right-wing ideas an academic shine. Peterson himself once said, "I feel like I'm surfing a giant wave, and it could come crashing down and wipe me out, or I could ride it and continue." And once that fight went global, his audience became something much bigger than a fan base. Why young men held onto every word. Peterson's audience grew fast, especially among young men. Some of them called themselves lobsters, a joking name taken from the first chapter of 12 Rules for Life. In that chapter, Peterson used lobsters to talk about social rank, status, winners, losers, and the old nervous systems that humans and lobsters share. His advice was not aimed only at men, and he later said that 55% of his online audience was female. But his message clearly hit many young men who felt lost, angry, lonely, or tired of being told they were the problem. He told them to grow up. He told them to take responsibility. In the Cathy Newman interview, he said, "Men need to grow the hell up." For some viewers, that was not an insult. It was the first serious push they had heard in years. His book was praised by huge online figures, including PewDiePie, who told his millions of subscribers that it gave him new perspectives. His ideas were discussed on Joe Rogan, the H3 podcast, 4chan, anime forums, Reddit, and many other corners of the internet. His lectures were long and dense, but people still watched. Some fans said he changed their lives. Some even said he saved them. That is the softer side of his rise, and it cannot be ignored. But there was another side too. Critics worried that his lobster ideas made hierarchy feel too natural, as if some people were simply meant to stay low. Others accused him of giving intellectual cover to bigotry, so even his advice became a battleground. The same words that helped some people stand up made other people feel pushed down. The views that made him loved and hated. Peterson describes himself as a classical liberal and a traditionalist. He has said people often mistake him as right-wing, and he has supported things like universal health care, wealth redistribution toward the poor, and drug decriminalization. But many writers, journalists, and academics still describe him as conservative or conservative-leaning. Part of that comes from his views on universities, political correctness, and identity politics. Peterson argues that universities helped create a wave of political correctness in North America and Europe. He believes many humanities fields have been weakened by postmodernism and neo-Marxism. He has criticized areas like women's studies, sociology, anthropology, English literature, ethnic studies, and racial studies, saying students are being pushed into dangerous ideas. In 2017, he even said he wanted to create a website that would warn students away from what he called postmodern neo-Marxist cult classes. After backlash, he did not go through with it. In a 2018 Time interview, he said, "People should not play racial, ethnic, or gender identity games." He argued that both the left and the right can fall into that trap. For him, the better path is to focus on individual life and personal responsibility. Critics called this too simple. They said he ignored real social problems and turned complex issues into a war between strong individuals and weak groups. His language often made the fight hotter. He called white privilege a Marxist lie. He called Islamophobia a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons. These lines made fans cheer and critics worry. They also made him harder to escape, because outrage kept feeding the machine around him. Why controversy followed him everywhere. By 2018, Peterson was not just giving advice. He was one of the faces of the culture war. His audience included Christian conservatives, atheist libertarians, centrist pundits, and even people on the far-right fringe, including neo-Nazis. Peterson did not fully endorse the far right, and he claimed that some people from the radical right wrote to him saying his lectures stopped them from going all the way. Still, critics argued that some of his ideas overlapped with dangerous movements. He was accused of downplaying dangers from the right while attacking the left with full force. His statements about women, masculinity, and gender also kept causing backlash. He said there was a crisis of masculinity and that the masculine spirit was under assault. He argued that the left painted hierarchy as an oppressive patriarchy, while ignoring competence. He also said men without partners were more likely to become violent, and that monogamy helped reduce male violence. In his debate with Cathy Newman, he argued that a simple gender pay gap did not exist once many factors were studied together. Newman was later hit with online abuse and threats. Peterson said he told his supporters to back off once he knew about it. But critics said his style of debate encouraged combat. His fans often posted clips with titles saying he destroyed someone. His defenders saw that as strength. His critics saw it as a machine built for humiliation. And that is where Peterson's public image became harder to separate from the behavior of the crowd around him. Fame had made him louder, but it had also made everything around him less controllable. When fame started, costing him his old life. As Peterson's fame grew, his old professional life began to change. Because of new projects, he put his clinical practice on hold in 2017. By 2018, he had also temporarily stopped teaching. This was a major shift. For years, he had been a professor and a practicing psychologist who saw patients every week. Now he was becoming something else: speaker, author, podcaster, online figure, and political fighter. But his professional body in Ontario was still watching. In February 2018, Peterson reached an agreement with the College of Psychologists of Ontario after a complaint about his communication and the boundaries he set with patients. The college did not require a full disciplinary hearing. Instead, it accepted a 3-month plan where Peterson would work on prioritizing his practice and improving patient communication. He had no past disciplinary punishments or limits on his clinical work. In January 2019, he deleted his Patreon account after the platform banned Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, for racist language used on YouTube. Peterson and Dave Rubin then announced a new free speech platform called ThinkSpot, which had a limited release later in 2019 and stayed in beta testing. In March 2019, Cambridge University also withdrew a visiting fellowship invitation after controversy over a photo of Peterson with a man wearing an "I'm a proud Islamophobe" shirt. Peterson said the photo was only one of thousands taken with fans and called the decision a deeply unfortunate error of judgment. In March 2020, the college investigated other public statements that were alleged to be transphobic, sexist, racist, and not in line with clinical understanding of mental health. The investigation ended without orders, but the college raised concern that the manner and tone of his public comments could reflect poorly on psychology. They advised him to express opinions in a respectful tone. For Peterson, this looked like censorship. For the college, it was about professional standards. Either way, his old role as a psychologist was now tied to every public sentence he made. The internet had followed him into the profession he built before fame. But while the public watched the battles, a much quieter crisis was growing at home. Behind the debates was a family in pain. To understand the private crisis, the story has to step back. Peterson married Tammy Roberts in 1989, and she remained beside him through the most difficult years of his life. They had 2 children, Michaela and Julian. Michaela was named after Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, which fits Peterson's lifelong interest in the Cold War and totalitarian systems. But Michaela's own life was shaped by serious illness. As a child, she suffered from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. By the time she was 17, she needed a hip and ankle replacement. Later, she became a political commentator and podcaster and adopted what she called the lion diet, eating only beef, salt, and water. Peterson also changed his own diet. In 2016, he limited himself to meat and a few vegetables, hoping to control depression and problems linked to an autoimmune disorder. By mid-2018, he stopped eating vegetables completely and ate only beef, salt, and water. Nutrition experts warned that such a diet could cause severe dysregulation. Michaela later said Peterson had a violent reaction to a meat and greens diet. Around that time, Peterson was prescribed clonazepam for anxiety. His dose reportedly began at 0.5 milligrams a day in 2016 and rose to 4 milligrams a day by 2020. He linked the increased use to the stress of Tammy's kidney cancer diagnosis. So while the world saw a man debating order, strength, and responsibility, his home life was filled with illness, fear, and pressure. That contrast is what makes this part of his life feel so heavy. He was telling strangers how to survive chaos, while chaos was moving through his own front door. The breakdown that shocked his followers. Peterson later said He tried several times to reduce or stop clonazepam, but went through horrific benzodiazepine withdrawal. In January 2020, according to Peterson, he could not find North American doctors willing to place him in a medically induced coma as treatment for his addiction. So he flew to Moscow, Russia. When he arrived, doctors reportedly found pneumonia in both lungs. He was placed in a medically induced coma for 8 days and then spent 4 weeks in intensive care. During that time, he later said he suffered a temporary loss of motor skills. It was a stunning turn. The man many fans saw as a guide through chaos had been swallowed by chaos himself. After treatment in Russia, Peterson and his family spent several months in Belgrade, Serbia. In June 2020, he made his first public appearance in over a year on his daughter's podcast. At that point, he said he was back to his regular self. But the struggle was not fully over. In August 2020, Michaela announced that he had contracted COVID-19 during his hospital stay in Serbia. 2 months later, Peterson told viewers on his YouTube channel that he had returned to Canada and hoped to resume work soon. For supporters, his return felt like survival. For critics, the controversy around him did not pause for long. But personally, the image had changed. Peterson had spent years talking about suffering as part of life. Now the suffering was no longer just a topic in a lecture. It was written across his own body, and his comeback would not feel like a simple, happy ending. When survival led back into controversy, Peterson returned to public work, but the world around him had changed. His third book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, came out on March 2, 2021. Even before release, the book caused tension inside Penguin Random House Canada, where employees criticized the decision to publish it during an internal town hall. In late 2021, Peterson retired from the University of Toronto and became Professor Emeritus. In January 2022, on Joe Rogan's show, Peterson said Earth's climate was too complex to model accurately, which several climate scientists criticized. In May 2022, he became Chancellor of Ralston College, a newly launched unaccredited liberal arts education project. In June 2022, he signed a deal with the Daily Wire, giving the company distribution rights to his video and podcast library. He also agreed to create bonus content and specials for Daily Wire Plus. That same year, his Twitter account was suspended after he posted about transgender actor Elliot Page, misgendered and dead-named him, and called his physician a criminal. Peterson said he was told he had to delete the tweet to get access back, and responded that he would rather die than do. YouTube also demonetized 2 of his videos, including one about the Twitter suspension and another in which he called gender-affirming care Nazi medical experiment level wrong. His Twitter account was restored in November 2022 after Elon Musk bought the platform. He also defended engineer James Damore after Google fired him over the memo Google's ideological echo chamber. By this stage, Peterson's comeback was not quiet. It placed him right back inside the battles that had made him famous. The fights had clearly moved far beyond campus walls. If anything, the next fight became even more personal. His biggest battle with the system. In November 2022, the College of Psychologists of Ontario ordered Peterson to complete a continuing education or remedial program about professionalism in public statements. The college said some of his language from January to June 2022 could be seen by members of the profession as disgraceful, dishonorable, or unprofessional. It also said his statements posed a moderate risk of harm by weakening public trust in psychology. Peterson denied wrongdoing and fought the decision in court. With Baroness Stroud and John Anderson, he founded the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship in June 2023 and hosted its international conference in October. In August 2023, a panel of 3 judges upheld the college's decision and ordered him to pay $25,000 in legal costs. The Court of Appeal for Ontario upheld it again in January 2024. In August 2024, the Supreme Court of Canada refused to hear another appeal, closing his legal path against the social media training. Peterson wrote fiercely about the case. He said, "I am likely to soon lose my license to practice as a clinical psychologist in my home province of Ontario." He also wrote, "Take my license, if you can, if you dare, you pathetic censors." Even while fighting regulators, he kept building new projects. In 2024, he launched Peterson Academy, an online education platform with pre-recorded lectures. That same year, he published We Who Wrestle with God, an analytical reading of the first 5 books of the Bible, along with Job and Jonah. Reviews were mixed, and some were harsh. In October 2024, Justin Trudeau said under oath that Peterson was funded by RT. Peterson said he was considering legal action. Then, in May 2025, his Jubilee debate with atheists went viral after he refused to clearly call himself Christian. The title was changed, and the questions around him only grew. The hardest chapter was still waiting. By 2026, Peterson was living in Arizona, far from the Canadian academic world that first shaped him. But the most painful part of his story was no longer just about debate, fame, or politics. It was his health. Since August 2025, Peterson had been suffering from chronic inflammatory response syndrome. He was in intensive care for 3 months after being diagnosed with polyneuropathy and later myopathy. In December 2025, his family confirmed that he had returned home, though his health had shown little improvement. Then, in April 2026, his daughter Michaela shared another painful update. She said Peterson had been dealing with a serious neurological injury and symptoms of akathisia, a condition linked to inner restlessness and the inability to stay still. She said he had suffered from it in past years, too. According to her, the condition became worse the previous summer after a flare-up likely linked to mold exposure, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and stress. Pneumonia and sepsis made things even harder. She described the year as devastating and said neurological injuries from psychiatric medication are more common than people know, often misdiagnosed, hard to treat, and hidden. She also said she did not plan to keep giving updates because it stressed the family. Michaela said they were dealing with missing her dad, her pregnancy, taking care of him, and being very sad, while also facing people online. Her final words were simple and heavy. Prayers are appreciated still. And that is where the title becomes clear. At 63, Jordan Peterson is still famous, still argued over, and still influential. But behind the name is a man facing pain that no lecture, book, or viral clip can make easy to understand. So, what do you think really broke Jordan Peterson the most? The fame, the backlash, the health battles, or becoming a symbol nobody would leave alone? And after all of this, do you see him as a man who survived the chaos, or someone still trapped inside it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.